Cool.
Hello, everyone. This is the Paint the Town Red podcast. I'm your host, Chance, as usual, and today we have Forrest on the show. You guys know him. He's been on the show before.
Let's paint the
How's it
town
going?
red, dude. It's going good. I'm ready. I'm ready to paint the town.
Nice. So what do you guys got? What do you and your brother got going on right now?
So we are probably going to be, well, we're just working on content. So this airplane isn't too loud, is it? Okay, cool. Just making sure it's loud here, but I don't think you can hear it too well. So we're trying to transfer as much engagement as we can from the main hub, which is where everything happens, Instagram, to a little bit of X, Twitter, but predominantly YouTube, where we're doing more like long, drawn out debates, long form content, some thought pieces. So we put a lot of effort into that recently, getting our website built out. The final version will be launched in the coming few days, week. So we're just focusing on the branding aspect of it and trying to expand, because you go to Instagram and you see the little hot takes, and some of it's funny and some of it's offensive and some of it's whatever. And that's kind of where we draw people in. But if people want to hear more about who we are, what we think, which is always evolving, honestly, the long form stuff is like where they go. So that's been getting a lot of positive responses as of late, and that's kind of where the majority of our effort is going, because online it's very quick clips, funny, dopamine. But then, people want to get into like, who are these guys? So that's kind of where we're focused. What about you?
Yeah, pretty much similar. I'm trying to kind of take this stuff on Instagram and funnel it into like making money in some way. Not because I love money and I'm a big old capitalist pig and I hate poor people, because that's what I get all the time. It's like, bro, I'm not even rich. Like, I don't even make good money at all. I don't make money from this at all.
Chance,
And
we're
like,
all
people are so
capitalist pigs.
quick.
All of us. We're all capitalist pigs, okay? It's okay.
Well, some people are so quick on my Instagram to be in my comments and be like, you hate poors, you're a Jew yourself. And I'm like, my God, you can't make $1 around here without pissing everybody off.
If you like
What
money,
was I going to say about that? Oh, so yeah, I'm taking the money, or I'm taking the influence from the Instagram. I'm trying to funnel it into like, YouTube. I've got some peptide stuff going on. I'm trying to sell some peptides. I don't know if you do peptides, but yeah, I guess it's a good time to plug them. It's called Nexa Peptides. You guys look them up on Instagram. Great company. Guy knows everything about peptides. If you have any questions, I was doing some research myself because I take peptides, and he has me on a whole routine.
What are you taking? Which
Pretty good.
peptide?
It's let me see here what I'm taking.
I've dabbled a little bit in the past. I went to a wellness clinic and I wanted to try and see if I could get on TRT. This is before I had my daughter. And he's like, dude, your testosterone is like, you're fine. And I'm like, well, I can't, I have a hard time putting on muscle because I'm 6'5" and I work out a lot and I got to eat. So I said, you know what? I'm not going to get big. Let me just try peptides. I tried them. I wasn't blown away by the effects, but I think I'm open to reintroducing them in the future. I've been getting into combat sports and I'm 31. So an injury is likely, so the ones, what is it, BPC 157, like stuff like that keeps you regenerating your,
Yeah.
how it works, keeps your
So
cells
I'm
regenerating.
taking tesamorelin, which is supposed to help with like your testosterone and help with just being healthier, more masculine. Helps with like kind of everything, eyes wider, teeth wider, all that. And then I'm taking, the BP517. It's like a blend of BP517, a few other ones that are with it, and they just like activate healing and like collagen growth for like your skin, because I've got skin acne, stuff like that. And then as well as I'm taking one more, and I can't find it. Let me see here. I'm taking. I should know what I'm taking. I should know what I'm putting in my body. I don't know if this thing's gonna load, but essentially it's 3 different peptides. One deals with like being, HGH, testosterone. One deals with healing inside and just kind of collagen production, and then one deals with like your hair, your skin, and your hair and your skin being more healthy, and it actually makes your skin a little bit more tan. It's called like K Glow, I think is what it's called. And so yeah, that's what I'm all looks maxing protocol.
Is there one that makes your dick smaller? Because I've been really struggling with just the size of my dick in recent
I'm
time.
sure. So, peptides, trying to get something going with that. But, yeah, and you guys I seen your guys' content. You guys are definitely kicking up a notch. I see a lot of you doing, like being the friendly racist guy. I love that character. That's cool.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. We have to challenge what these words even mean. It's like either we're going to live in reality or we're not. And if we're going to draw socially constructed boundaries around races, if we're going to give them names, we might as well be honest about the differences between those races. this isn't something we would even have to do if a bunch of different races didn't live together. If we were all just like Denmark, we could all just be Danish and we wouldn't even have to have these uncomfortable conversations. I don't want to do it. And like you said earlier, it's like people want to criticize you for making $1 as if making money is just innately Jewish. But it's like we literally become social outcasts when we get into dissident politics. And I didn't even get into this because I wanted to. I got into it. I suppose I wanted to, but I feel like it was important. Like I was, I'm intending to pursue truth. And it's like by doing so, I will never be able to work a corporate job ever again. It's like it's not an option for me. So I don't do this because it's the most lucrative thing to do. I do it because I want to and I think it's right and it's interesting. But yeah, you got to make look, dude, you got to make a dime, right? You got a family to feed. So, hey, fuck them.
That's what I'm saying. And it's like, yeah, we're putting our like reputation on the line, our careers on the line, our lives on the line, and a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
And these people in the comments that will never do a dang thing. They will complain all day long, but they never do any act. They never take any action.
Nope.
They're saying that I'm too, too confident, or I'm boastful, or that I talk about money, or that's just so stupid. But yeah, there's a lot of things within our side, and we were talking about this earlier, that I despise. And I hate to like go on the rant. You never see like, I guess, Trump or like any politician, any movement leader of any kind of going back and then criticizing their own side. There's only a few select that do, and it's becoming more common within our generation. And I think that's a good trend. I
Mm,
really do. I think being able to criticize yourself and your own movement, your own people is important. I don't think you should like completely switch over and focus all of your attention on that, because first of all, it's going to be unpopular within your own crowd. But I
right.
think it's important to do it. So that way people go, yeah, no what, you know what, he's right about that. That is a problem our side has, and we need to address it and we need to fix it. Because you're going to fast forward 10 years from now, we're going to have all these problems solved. And then by the time we're going to be a political force to reckon with. So yeah, I totally agree with you. We were talking earlier about how kind of liberals are actually more based than a lot of us think, right?
I think that they are tuned to, I think they're a little bit more sensitive to the things that there's on the right, you become a little bit more full circle about. I guess they would put it as like class conflict or disparities, social disparities, stuff like that. Identity, right? Identity politics was very popular on the left in the 2015, 2016 to 2020. So I think they are sensitive and tuned to perceive those things faster. And I think it's coming full circle because I think that those are inevitable features of society, right? If we were all 130 IQ Anglo Saxons, maybe we could have like an anarcho, libertarian, there's no government, but that's just not the reality, right? So we have to structure a society some way. And I think identity has to be in there. It has to be in there at least a little bit. So we've gotten to this point where we emphasize, and those are the most secular societies, by the way. They're the most godless societies, but they're the most high trust flourishing societies that we have. And I think part of that is because they have a high trust homogenous society. And it's like, I mean, like, what does that say?
Yeah.
What does that say? So I think I was having a lunch with this guy from church, and he was like a neoliberal kind of anti colonialist sort of person, like a liberal, not a libtard, like not crazy woke, but from LA and very
Like a Joe Rogan.
like a Joe Rogan or maybe a little twinge of more than that. But yeah, like Joe Rogan on a day that he took psychedelics earlier that morning or something like
Okay.
that. Good guy, but I just think that yeah, the way that ultimately people view the world is kind of downstream from who they are temperamentally, and the further we get away from like a cohesive basis, the more problems are gonna arise. So him and I were basically disagreeing back and forth on whether or not this whole immigration thing is a problem. He did make an interesting point though, because of course it all came back to, oh, well, why isn't Africa succeeding? Oh, well, it's because of the colonialists. It's kind of this narrative that I tend to reject. But he made the point that he called it, it's this book that this guy wrote. It's called Anti-Fragile, I think. I don't know anything about the book. All I know is what he told me about it. And it was an interesting point. He said that things like you can take a material like glass, and if you stress it, it will break. Everything has that. Even like steel, under enough pressure, it will break. But he thinks that there's like this concept called anti-fragile that the author apparently explains in some different way in the book, that by stressing something, it actually makes it stronger. It's like a reverse effect. So he posited that perhaps the multicultural stressors and issues within our society that we're experiencing could maybe long term serving to strengthen it. It's unlikely, but it was at least an interesting perspective that I hadn't really considered, you know? So someone's beating you in the face, right? And he's like, no, I promise this is gonna it's gonna make you stronger. It's like, okay, well, maybe, but inter- interesting justification. So I kind of went on a bunch of tangents there, but that's where I've been
Yeah.
recently.
Yeah, that is an interesting concept, I guess. It's like all the multiculturalism. The problem is though is that it there is irreversible. I guess there's materials that when they get to a certain point they break, and if you like don't get to the breaking point, they don't strengthen. They're still just that strong, if not weaker from the stress. But then
Right.
you have like, a human biology, that is the case, right? They do get stronger as stress, as long as it's not too much.
Yep.
Going to the gym. That's the concept of going to the gym. I don't know if multiculturalism in America or in whatever nation you're a part of has that effect because you're going to be mixing breeds with them, so it's going to water down your genetics. Your entire evolutionary path that you and your grandfathers have all carved to being better and better and better over every generation gets wiped away, and we start back at square one, or at least dragged back to square one, or back in the other direction. So I don't know if that has the same effect, but that's
Definitely
an
not.
interesting topic.
I tend to agree with you on that one. Clearly,
Yeah.
I have a. I think that nothing can be completely reduced to just genetics, but genetics absolutely has to do with it. I'm very much a determinist in that way. I think that look, man, genetics matter. They just do. You know, you have a society full of people with 100 IQ, it's going to look different than a society full of people with 150 IQ. It's
Mhm.
going to look different. That's just a fact. You know, and it was funny because during this lunch, he actually said something similar. He said, I know people who have kids who have Down syndrome, and they say, these are kids that a lot of the times people will just abort people with Down syndrome because they're, like lesser or something like that, which is common because they will often have a lower quality of life. They die earlier. So I guess people choose to abort them more often. That's probably true. And he's saying, yeah, this is a culture that we're not experiencing because they're being genocided. Which is a weird way to put it, abortion is eugenics, but I never considered that Down syndrome people were being genocided. And I wouldn't put it that way. But he says, yeah, these people, they have a child with Down syndrome and they say he's taught us patience and all these things. And I agree that like you can draw things from other people. So like, sure, I can I can have a Down syndrome child, and this child could teach me patience and unconditional love or whatever. And it's a matter of perspective too, and allowing yourself to learn from these things. But I said to him, I was like, listen, dude, if you just had a society built by just Down syndrome people. Do you think that's going to be superior than a society of people who don't have Down syndrome? And like the answer to me is just very clear. The only reason why we can have this inclusive understanding perspective is because we've evolved to where we can facilitate people that aren't the same. Like you look at like the Oregon Trail, they used to leave people just on the side of the road with a broken ankle because they couldn't afford to keep them. They were just a liability. It's a matter of survival. When we have excess, we can meet people where they're at. Unfortunately, and I think you and I agree on this, is that we're tending in a direction to where the founding stock of the United States will go extinct. Those are the people that created these institutions, the reason why people want to live here. And if that happens, there will be no society to include other people. It will just be another third world society. I don't see any way around that. And the guy I had lunch with today, I don't think agrees. I don't know where the disconnect though is because, and I'm good with people. So like it didn't get contentious or anything, but he agreed with basically every point that I made, but he rejected my overall diagnosis, even though he sort of just conceded all of it. And he made some good points too, but I don't think any of the points that he made were contrary to mine. So I think that the more we just sort of communicate these ideas, the more palatable they'll become. And I'm happy to be critiqued and have my mind changed. But where I'm at with it, the more I learn, I just think it is a cultural thing. It is a genetic thing. These things do matter. I mean, we know for sure when you throw a bunch of people together, it just creates conflict. That is just clearly the case. So, what's the best way to structure a society? That's kind of the question here. And
Well,
what we're doing.
yeah. Yeah, and to expand on that, it really comes back to this. It's like what do you categorize as a society? And then why are those things the things that categorize it? Well, it's because it's essential to the existence of it, meaning a border around a country is you have to have it to have a country. You
Yeah.
have to. If you don't have a country. So it's essential, okay? The people of that nation are also essential to making that nation. That is the argument we're proposing. And we have been lied to about that. Our parents were lied to, our grandparents were lied to. We have been told that a nation is made up of a border, a constitution, and that's literally it.
Yep.
Rules on a paper and a border. That's it. That's not true. It's actually three things. We could say a constitution is kind of like our moral code or like our rule set that we all abide by, our border, defending the inside and outside, and then who's within that border. Well, who's within that border is made up by a specific bloodline. And if you say, well, no, because race doesn't matter and da 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 da, da. Well, they get over here and they get a piece of paper and now they're Americans because they were born on this side of the fence. That's going to water down our ability as men and as people in society to be able to fight for our own tribe. Why? Because the people that are now here have allegiances to the other side of the fence, which waters down or makes it to where the border that's essential to the society is no longer there. It erodes it. And I'm not here for like no immigration. I think there should be some immigration from people from that are like us. You know, the Federalist Papers, and I know you had Thomas Massey on the show just recently. I'm sure he might
Rousseau.
have introduced to you, and I'm sure you already know this, but for the ones that don't know, the
Thomas
Federalist
Rousseau,
Papers, what
not
was that?
Massey. Thomas Rousseau, not Massey. We'll get Massey
Thomas
one
Rousseau.
day.
Sorry, Thomas Rousseau. My bad. But Federalist Papers 2 clearly says that America is a people with similar ancestors and the same religion. It clearly says that. So our founding fathers knew what made up our nation. And I know Forrest is not religious, and we'll talk about that right now. But I hope that when MAGA hears this, or even when you and I, when we talk to people who are just not understanding of this, we're trying to wash away the brainwashing that goes with this. You start talking about white race, black people, Mexicans, like, and we probably don't do a good job. We don't serve ourself justice by going on and, being racist and making jokes, but I think there's good in that too. But to these people, if we're simply trying to convince them, maybe that's the way we need to attack it, is like, this is essential for a society to designate ourselves as a group of people. It's essential. And it's historical. Every civilization ever, that is how they divided between each other, is the look, their appearance of who they are, their genetics. And it's entrenched in every aspect of our society and our biology. We all know Black people smell, Indians smell, Mexicans smell. They smell different than us. Guess what? They think we smell. Why is that? It's because it's ingrained in your biology. God made us that way, and God's creation is vast and beautiful. You don't want men dressing up like women and not giving credence to God's creation as far as gender goes. But when it comes to racial differences, you want to wipe the slate clean and deny God's creation? That's just as equally as evil, in my opinion. Now, Forrest, you're not religion, right?
Not currently. It's possible. I'm only 31, so there's a lot of time to change that. But no,
Yeah. And I'm not going to try. We've talked before. I'm not going to sit here and try to convince you of religion, but something I
you should
respect about people
try.
that are in your position, it's like where you have this thought. It's like, I want to go out on a limb and say something. We all have even myself, I believe probably exactly what you believe when it comes to creation, God, and stuff. Because here's the fact: nobody knows, and the simple people not acknowledging that nobody knows if God exists or not is what, when I was younger, drove me actually away from religion and believing in Christ. Because it's like, you guys are all lying. Nobody died and came back to life and said, I met God. Yeah, he said that we all need to do this thing where we, hide Easter eggs on Easter and like that never happened. But a lot of people are pretending like it has, though. And so that, for me, when my brother passed away, that actually angered me. And I wanted to revolt against religion even more and be like, no,
Mm.
there's no way, But more than that, you come from a logical perspective. Okay, on the ground, what are the facts and what is going to work? What is going to actually make us win the game that we're playing? And that's really important to have logical people like that. And I think sometimes people get wrapped up in religion, and it's not a game of like belief or like, solving moral issues or anything, existential issues. It's more about like them going along with this political narrative because they're socially pressured to, rather than that's actually what they believe. And I see that probably just as much as you do. It frustrates me, and we have to be able to talk about that, even as Christians like myself. I believe in God, and I'm Christian, but I have to be honest. My faith is questioned at times. I question my faith. I don't know if God's real sometimes. I don't. I tell myself he's real. I want to believe that he's real. I do things like as if he is real, but I question it myself. And we have to be logical about that. One of the things that I really pay attention to right now with the religious group and how they get captured, ideologically captured, is with evolution. So the same group of people who are Christian Zionists, who are Judeo-Christian, and are in office right now, like Trump and his gang, and they're backing the Jewish state for religious reasons, which is just baffling to me. They also have other dogmas within their beliefs, right? Jews are the chosen ones, and there's arguments that they're not, but they believe that they are. They insist. They also believe that evolution is not real. Like they believe dinosaurs are made up and that the world is only 6,000 years old because God snapped his fingers and everything existed at once. And all of the science that we have, the factual proof that the world is older than 6,000 years, and these are not just like religious people. These are doctors, lawyers, political geniuses, people in Trump's campaign that are making millions of dollars. These are really educated, smart people that
Yes.
deny all of science.
Yes.
And you go, wait a minute, I'm Christian, but I'm not that Christian. I'm not like that. I love Christ. I'll die for Christ, right? I believe in it. I have faith in Christ, okay? But I don't believe, I reject that type of going about life in that way, that I'm going to mosey along life and then, if we find out factual evidence that this cup is in fact a cup of Gatorade, but the Bible says something different, so then I'm going to take the Bible's word for it and just tell everybody that they're not seeing a cup of Gatorade right here
Yeah.
because I interpret the Bible a certain way. That's wrong. And we have a clear line of history too with the Catholic Church, us thinking that the world revolved around, or the sun revolved around the world, then finding out it didn't. We killed people for generations because they tried to promote that, all to find out that, oh, wait a minute, actually it's true. And now the church agrees, oh yeah, no, actually, sorry, we killed a lot of people and burned them at the stake and like killed their entire gene pool, and they're actually really smart. So anyway, yep, the sun, we actually revolve around the sun. All right, let's move on. And that's what's happening right now with the Christian Zionism stuff. And also, I would say with evolution, they just flat out don't acknowledge it. Have you seen any of that?
Yeah, of course. There's a lot of books on this. I just read one. I don't know if you might be familiar with Sam Harris. I think he's one of the most compelling atheistic thinkers.
Yeah.
I do not consider myself an atheist, but in terms of someone who rejects theism, he has made the most compelling case that I've seen for a secular version of objective morality. So he believes that you can make a scientific case for objective morality. And then, like you just said, that sort of dogmatism that we see, that's the problem, right? That's the problem with religion. Someone like you who believes in evolution, say, that calls himself a Christian, and then someone who believes the earth is 6,000 years old that calls themselves Christian. It's almost like those things are so different that how are we even calling them the same thing? How is that the same religion? It doesn't make any sense, and this kind of gets into the semantics of it all. My view of religion isn't even that it's wrong. You can get into the like the theological disagreements and then like the actual historicity of this happened at this time and this is why I believe this. I think that there's all sorts of true things in probably all the religious texts, but there's also things that at this time we pretty much unanimously agree is morally wrong. And that's because we learn new things and morals change. And I think that religion, again, it's part of like the extended phenotype. It's like art, it's an expression of the people who made it. I think it's very clear that the Bible was written by men. And you could say, well, it was divinely inspired. And I would say, yeah, it was divinely inspired in the same way that, Mozart, his pieces were divinely inspired, right? It's like these are philosophical and artistic demonstrations of what we think is true. So, I mean, it's stuck around as sort of like an archival system, right? It's a way that we hold truth. But unfortunately, we learn new things, and then people want to hold on to this, and that's where the dogmatic element sort of holds us back. But then you have people like Douglas Murray or Jordan Peterson who say, well, you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. This is how we got here. So if we just say no more religion, what do we have left? And that's perfectly fair too, because at the same time, the secular humanist atheist community, despite the fact it hasn't been around very long, they have failed to produce anything as compelling as religion, right? As Jesus, right? So until something like that comes along, people will default towards, the traditional religions. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think that Christianity has historically been a part of Western society. I think the West has done it best. But something, and maybe this will help put into perspective the way that I view religion. I was on a car ride with someone a couple months ago, and he said, he was defending Christianity. He said, Europe reached its heights under Christianity. And it's like, okay, you say Europe reached its heights under Christianity, and I say Christianity reached its heights over Europe. Does that make sense? I view religion as just like art and everything else. It's an emergent property. It's a way that we write down who we are. And I think that that is secondary to the people. And it doesn't make it less true. And it doesn't even make it not transcendent necessarily, because we don't know. We don't know where we come from. We have no idea. There might be a God. I don't believe in free will. I don't, I believe that many things in morality are subjective. I think maybe you can make the Sam Harris case that it's objective. There is a best well-being, but it does require subjective minds. But that doesn't mean there's no God. Like, we got here somehow. Perhaps we were created. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. I mean, I learned a lot of new things. I've got books that I'm reading right now. I don't fucking know everything, but
Yeah.
I do think that there's a lot of stuff that we could really afford to just leave behind. People want to say, oh, I want a Catholic theocracy, or I want Christian nationalism. And it's like, we tried that already. And here we are. So, without spiraling into everything's the Jews, I think we can take responsibility, and we need to move through and forward. We don't need to revive theocracy. We don't need to resuscitate the reputation of Adolf Hitler. We're here now. We need to move forward with what we know and create something new. And I think myth could be part of that. Blood, soil, myth, right? I think that I mean, look, I'll wrap up my little spiel here with this, but Jordan Peterson talks about this. If you look at the evolution of human behavior in society, symbols are part of that. So we evolved that part of like the evolutionary process. We assign meaning to symbols. Like, symbols are really meaningful. We have flags and we have art and we have symbols, right? They signify things. And this evolved alongside us for a reason. So it's almost as if communicating something, even if not true in a literal objective sense via myth, is actually more effective than just like a clinical, scientific, synthetic version of it. Or we can talk about evolution all day, but that doesn't teach us everything we need to know about ethics, does it? There's a lot of room to grow, and I've got a lot to learn. But as it stands, I'm not religious, but I pray. I go to church. I think that these things are useful for a reason, right? It's like these things didn't just happen because somebody made it up. They're emergent from the people. They're part of our survival and our social, they're part of who we are as humans. We're social creatures, so they matter, right? That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. The way I look at it's like this. It's like, well, not only has the secularism or the secular people, not only have they not developed a religion that can compete with the religious belief, all the other religions that are around today, they also can't compete in the world. I mean, outside of science, like every boxer that that's good believes in as a religion, believes in God. People typically who believe in God or believe in something greater are able to get off drugs and switch their life around way more of the time than the people who are secular. Now, that could be a fact of like culture and whatever you want to call it, but I think there's something to it. I think
Yeah.
that when the rubber meets the road, if you at least there's something to be said about pretending that when you die, you go somewhere else and you're going to have to answer for what you've done here, or it will be exposed in some way. Maybe even not to anyone, but maybe just to yourself. That even could be the case. We don't know. And that alone right there that little shift will change your perspective. You know, when you're by yourself, you act a certain way. But if you think someone's watching you, and it's not to like scare you into like acting right, it's just to say like maybe you're watching yourself. Maybe you're, you know, you break your soul on your own. You know, there's something to that. And I don't know if, you know, maybe there, I'm not saying people that are secular are not moral. I'm not saying you're not moral. I think they are. And I think that like you don't want to die. Why you not want to die? Because it hurts, right? And you don't want to hurt people's feelings. But also, too, I think there's another step, which is seeing something past this lifetime. I think that's one of the big things within religion. And then you talk about belief, and then you talk about religion. Well, that's just the organized
Yes.
thoughts that people go down, right? Some people are Catholic, some people are this, some people are that. And so
Yep.
you agree with some of the people that organize their afterlife belief around these things, you know, some Christ, some not. Yeah, it's interesting. It's
You
interesting you
said
mentioned that.
you said something really good there. You said there is something to it, right? There's something to the fact that a drug addict will be more likely to recover if they put their faith in something greater than them. And I'll tell you a personal story. I think for me, it's clear that the issue isn't in that pursuit. It's in assigning it a precise label that creates conflict with other people. And I'll give you a firsthand example. I've been clean from heroin for 8 years. May 1st will be 8 years. And I did just that. When I got to NA, when I was 23, I did the NA program. It's a 12-step secular, non-religious, but spiritual program. So the first few steps require a belief in something transcendental. You have to put your faith in a power that is greater than yourself. Now, for some people, they come in and they're already Christian, right? So they say, okay, well, that's Jesus. Easy, job done. Now, for me, I was spiritual, right? I had inclinations towards whatever the transcendental might be, but I wasn't a Christian. So they told me, they said, okay, well, you can substitute the word God in the text for something else. Now you can actually use it as an acronym, GOD, group of drunks, gift of desperation. And I did that. I substituted it. And as my understanding of God changed, what I substituted that word for also changed. But the effects were the same. So, how is it that someone who puts their faith in Jesus will have the same effect as someone like me who puts their faith in something that's greater than myself, but isn't necessarily just Jesus, right? It could be Jesus, it could be this room of people, it could be this conversation that you and I are having, like something that's greater than the sum of its parts, right? This conversation isn't just you and me, it's something that's greater than the two of us put together, right? Like this couldn't happen by ourselves. So the problem comes from, okay, well, we're going to assign it this meaning, and this meaning locks us into a place in space time where any sort of deviation from it creates conflict. And then you have to have people, like you said, how are these people in office that are so intelligent? They're still like, oh, well, there's no evolution. It's like, it really does prevent us from moving forward. It's like the whole God of the gaps thing. People will assign God to things that we just don't understand. And I mean, what better of a thing to assign it? But like it matters, right? It's like, okay, people used to think that when someone was having a seizure that they were possessed. As soon as we could understand what was happening within your central nervous system, we said, oh, well, he's not demonic. So now we no longer do, exorcisms on someone who is withdrawing from benzodiazepines or something like that. So I just think there has to be room for that. And, the case that the secular humanists make is that they say, we don't know. We can move towards optimizing ethics, but without locking ourselves into dogmatism. But I think that what's happening is there's a gap between humans' consciousness, our ability to understand this, because there's not a lot of people on earth who accept this, right? It's like 2/3 of the earth is Christian and the rest is Muslim, and there's like some Jews in there. People aren't ready for it yet. The Enlightenment just happened a few hundred years ago. So there's going to be this period where we're trying to figure out ethics divorced from religion. And I will be honest, I have lots of fears around AI, but I do think that and I actually, when I had an interview with Jackson, we interviewed Eric Orwell, who is the founder of Return to the Land. He made an interesting point, and I've been thinking a lot about this. If there is an objective ethics, if morality is constant, then when we develop artificial general intelligence, hopefully it will be pointed in that direction, right? And it will actually discover the true, most moral well-being for everyone. Or it's all subjective and it will just kill us because we're meaningless humans. And why would it keep us around? Like, that's kind of the obvious fear. But yeah, when I sort of made this mental commitment to separate myself from religion and just accept I don't know, accept the self, I think, is probably just an illusion. I think free will is probably just an illusion. It's very uncomfortable. I've actually undergone somewhat of an existential crisis that would be most similar to what people describe when they go through an ego death. It's been quite difficult, but I do think that I'm pointed in the right direction. So the more that I discover, the more of this I'll kind of share with people. So that, I guess, that's where I'm at. This doesn't make anything wrong about what people think, but it also kind of does. I think people get locked in and it prevents us from moving forward in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And vice versa on the other side too. I think on the secular side, there's a lot of dogma as well, right? But like the Big Bang Theory, two atoms randomly in a giant black space collided together and then it and all this stuff happened. It's like, wait a minute. And then it's like, no, that's science. No, that's not science. That's what a
Yeah.
few of the top scientists believe happened in order to fill the gap that God answers, but they can't answer. So they try to fill the gap too with these theories that are also dogmatic, in my opinion. I think another big one, more on the ground as far as dogmatics go with the secularists, is also when it comes to like your day to day. So, like, they'll say, like, oh no, God, more like you were mentioning, like morality separated from religion, which I agree with, but maybe not morality separated from a belief, from a faith in something greater. Because the reason why, if you believe that, I mean, think about it right now. If you believe that there's no free will and you're like, pretty much you're dead. There is no you. You are dead. You don't have no control over what's going on. If you really believe that and you think you're just made up of your environment, well then guess what? You're going to be way more likely to go cheat on your wife, to sneak a corner, to cut a corner, to cheat on your math test, to do these things. Why?
I don't
Because
think
you're just a product of your environment. No, I know. I'm not saying you. I'm not saying
they
you. And
well,
I'm not saying most.
I know, but I'm saying they've done studies on this. I'm not prepared to cite them all now, but I have looked into this. If you want to read the most compelling book on it, check out The Moral Landscape. Sam Harris covers a lot of this stuff in that book. And they've actually done studies when people come to the realization that whether or not you believe that's actually true, but when they come arrive to the conclusion for themselves that free will doesn't exist, there's often a period of moral nihilism because you say, well, there's no me, like what, it doesn't matter. But then this often self-corrects. And here's an interesting kind of heuristic because you could take someone who's Muslim and they can go to a mosque and they can pray and they can experience these transcendent things, these things that call them higher, these things that make them better, that provide happiness or solace or rectifies their confusion with their lives. But then you can have someone who's Jewish or someone who's Buddhist or someone who's Christian that completely different beliefs arrive them to the same point. So they're experiencing the same thing. So what they're tapping into is not explanatory using the dogma that they use to describe it, right? Like if a Christian and a Muslim can have the same experience, applying different abstractions to that experience, that just means that the experience is beyond whatever they think it is. And I think that that experience can also be achieved through just like secular meditation. I used to fear that if we kind of got rid of religion, that we would sort of lose our grounding in morality. And potentially we would, maybe for a period of time. I just don't know that there's any evidence for that, to be honest with you. I really don't. I don't think that there is. I think that humans sort of, yeah,
I agree with you. Yeah, if you meditate and if you pray or if you do whatever the heck the Muslims do where you get a carpet, if you roll out a carpet and you sit on your knees and you do this, you get like a similar effect of like a calming of the mind. And then all their experiences are similar, but they go about different avenues. One has belief, one doesn't. One has a belief in something different. And I agree with you on that. But where I would just disagree is actually, believe it or not, comes from a logical perspective. You're secular, right? And the reason what's brought you to that, or you wouldn't call yourself a secular, but you would call yourself, I have questions, right? Is because you want to be ultimately logical. You want to say, okay, 2 + 2 = 4. I want to nail it down and find out. Now let's look at everything. Well, let's look at it. If you look at when the rubber meets the road, the people who do believe perform better. I mean, it's just that. Not all the time. Of course, you have the seculars that are the exception of the rule, like yourself. There's some of them become moral. They even lays out right here, like you said from this book, The Moral Landscape, maybe actually a lot more of them are moral than what we think. But what we do know for sure is that in this world that we live in today, the religious people that have a belief, not religious, but people who believe in something greater perform better at
totally.
all these subset of tasks and things that we do in life. And so we
Yeah.
go, well, why is that? So there's some type of logical reasoning on
Yes.
why we should pursue why that is, at least
If you
at bare
aren't
minimum.
called higher, yeah, if you aren't called higher, you won't go higher. That makes perfect sense. I mean, one thing I've heard people say is that all the greatest men ever believed in God, and that's true. But there's been like billions of people that believe in God. How many like actual like secular atheists have there really been? So the sample size thing doesn't do it for me. But I do agree with you because like look, to say, oh,
Yeah,
I'm secular isn't to say that I dispense with the transcendental. To be honest,
totally agree. Yeah.
yeah, I think it's the opposite. At least in my case, there are though the atheists that say, they're just mad, they're resentful. They say, "Fuck God, I don't want it, whatever. I'm just going to justify moral nihilism." But I think that if you make the case that ethics can be objective, you just have to ground it in something else because it has to be grounded in something, right? And if you could ground it in science, all the better. It's just we haven't been able to do that yet. So I agree with you. You have to pursue something higher, and it has to be greater than yourself. Otherwise, we just get materialism, which I'm not the biggest fan of.
You know what freaks me out is, about that, and I think about this a lot, especially when I was younger, is that, like, yeah, there's the facts on the ground of the differences between people who believe and don't, and that could be, tainted by, like you mentioned, the how many people are secular versus how many people are religious, it's not even close, right? But it's
Yeah.
like, have you ever had a crazy dream before and how it feels?
Hmm.
And you feel like you're like it's real, and you wake up and you go, "Holy crap, that was a dream? I was convinced that was real." Those type of experiences will really make you go, "Man," it almost makes you think, and it's weird that I mean, think about it, we sleep. What is sleeping? Like, our brain pretends to be dead for 8 hours, a third of the time, and then during that time, we have all these, like, other lives kinda in our brain, and
It
then
is
we
odd.
wake up back to our normal life. It's kinda crazy. It really makes you think, like, maybe when you die, and let's not even talk about religion, let's just talk about when you die, what happens? You just don't exist, it's just black all the time, there's just no perceiving anymore, so it's just gone. You don't feel bad, you don't feel good, it's just nothing. Or do you have a soul? Is there a soul? And does it move on? Does it somehow retain some type of information somehow? And you live out getting to watch humanity continue?
Maybe.
Maybe your loved ones continue? Maybe you get to live out seeing the past? All these different things. Maybe it's like a faint dream all the time. I don't know. I don't know what it is,
Here's
but
the interesting thing. I mean, we have not a single fucking clue how to account for consciousness. We don't know. People think it's an emergent property, and it likely is, but that doesn't really tell us very much. I mean, I was listening to this. There's this religious guy who is I forget if he was a neuroscientist or what. He was a PhD in something, and he did this whole presentation about these specific cases where people are literally missing like 2/3 of their brain. Like they've done a brain scan and it's just liquid. There's not brain matter in there, but they're a fully conscious, functioning individual. A lot of times, if you get shot in the head or like you lose brain matter, it will cause brain damage because you're still a biological system. But this means that, like, we feel that consciousness is vaguely associated with your brain. And I think it is, but it isn't just your brain. Like your brain that's retains information, that's your computational capacity, it's your IQ, it's your memories, it's your personality in a lot of ways. But it isn't, it's also something else. And I wonder, I mean, there's no evidence of where it comes from. It could be that we create this like biological substrate and we become like an antenna and we can access some sort of external source. That's possible. And I do think that different people have access to different levels of consciousness. You read like Nikola Tesla's journals, whether that was he was just a genetic freak or not, he had access to just a different level of consciousness. And even he believed we were like purely mechanistic beings, but that doesn't really prove anything about the nature of consciousness. Like we don't know. I think it has to do with everything. It's like your brain and it's also your gut. And is there some sort of like metaphysics to it? Is there something beyond just atoms, like just atom? Maybe. Who
some type
knows?
of wavelength of some kind.
Some kind of
What's
wave.
interesting to me, I know a lot of like I've jumped off the alien bandwagon, like even researching aliens or anything like that, because I have a good suspicion that it's just the U.S. government or governments around the world that are using that as a distraction to pull away from whatever they got going on. Matter of fact, I almost know it to be true. Like we've seen Laurel Lermer go on Joe Rogan, and we're like, all right, what's happening with our war in Iran, our debt? How's Trump going to solve it? What's these cryptocurrencies? And she's like, yeah, but did you see the alien sightings that he's dealing with? It's like, wait, what?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
What do you care about that? So I think that's happening, but the reason why I'm bringing it up is because people have dreams and they have these connections with these alien beings that are supposedly, not human, but they're like maybe they're like what we're just talking about. There's they're on this like consciousness substrate, and
Mhm.
there's certain people that have had connections with them, some that are not. And then there's people like Dr. Greer who's going out and he's arguing that if you meditate and do all these things, you could psychologically connect with them and call them in. And he actually does it. And he shows the lights, and I don't know if it's real or not, but it just got me thinking. The reason why I'm bringing it up in the first place is because, yeah, it's interesting to talk about. Yeah, are we, if you're a logical person, you go, okay, well, then we are a being, right? And the consciousness comes from us. The power comes from us outward, and that's what gives us consciousness. But then there's another line of thought thinking maybe it's on the outside and we're an antenna. We're
Yeah.
bringing it somehow. That's
Well,
an interesting
there's
concept.
there's some evidence that there's a collective nature to consciousness, right? Otherwise, why would we socialize, first of
They
all?
proved it. Yeah.
Well, yeah, right. I haven't looked into the precise evidence, but there's a few things. One thing I've heard of is shared hallucinations, which I do believe has been. I don't know how you can measure that in a laboratory. But secondhand accounts of people who take psychedelics, they will see precisely the same thing at the same time and account for it later once they sober. Another thing I just saw, this study that was done where, what was it? I forget the exact test they did, but they had people, it was like some sort of thought experiment where they said, oh right, it was an image. So they had an image and it was like an art image where it was four different faces or nine different faces on the, and they said, how many faces are in here? And it actually turned out that the image was, I think, thousands of different faces within the faces that just looked like bigger faces. So people would start just saying, oh, there's only nine faces, or there's only nine faces. And then eventually, like one or two people noticed, oh, it's like 2,000 faces. And then after that, people in different parts of the earth also started immediately coming to that conclusion. So I'm seeing a similar thing happen with the whole white. There's like the Anglophone countries are sort of, because there's like a genetic similarity, we're like realizing these things, and there's like this telepathic realization like, oh, we're under threat, kind of like how plants communicate, right? You see what I'm saying? And part of that is probably propaganda and
It's Odin. It's
yeah, it's right.
Odin and the pagan gods
Look,
communicating.
it's a mix. It's a mix of that. It's a mix of confirmation bias. It's a mix of echo chambers. But there's also something to it. It isn't just untrue. I mean, look, you have children. I have children. You love your children not because there's indisputable evidence that they're better than everybody else. It's because they're your children, and you can sort of extend that beyond
That's
to the people that
racist.
are more. Yeah, right. Well, here we go. See, and back to the beginning, we're here to challenge what that word means because I would actually say racism is a morally neutral term. I would say it's morally neutral.
If
You
you're
know,
not racist, that's insane. I mean,
if
literally.
you're not even living in reality, which
You
makes you.
biological? Are you a biological being? No. So yeah, that's a good point. And that study you're talking about, the study I saw was a rat study where rats were in different parts of the world and they had to solve a puzzle. As soon as one rat solved the puzzle, all the other rats across the world were able to solve the puzzle way
Yep.
faster. And you
Yep.
go, what's connecting them? Nothing. If there's a net, there's something that we're all getting our energy or our consciousness from, or at least that's the belief. And so that
Well,
leads you
look
to
at it.
believe, like, well, okay, well, what is that? Well, then we got to start going down these paths of
Yeah.
what our intent, who's giving the energy? Is it God? Is it a creator? Is it a this? Is it a that? What happens when we die? All these questions. Religion seeks to go in different paths. We all try to go in our different paths. You're an independent thinker. You don't want to be captured by the dogma. Me as well. I still go to church like you as well. And I listen to my pastor. I try to do the best I can. Obviously, I fall short on different things that my church preaches. But I try my best, and I think that's what we need to do, and try to seek out what is that energy coming from. I think that's one of the important things about it. Another area we could talk about, since we talked about the aliens, and that's weird. That's really just baffles me. And I think it baffles everybody. Is remote viewing? What the heck is remote viewing? How can someone go to sleep, have a dream, wake up, and tell you the coordinates of like a space
Yes.
or like a, something on the earth. And then they find
Yes.
out they never been there in their life. And then they find out that's exactly it was true. I mean,
Yeah.
what is
I just
going on?
I just read about this case with this woman. She got a like a severe brain surgery. It was so this guy had some, I think it was an aneurysm. It was some sort of like 50-50 you might die sort of situation. It was like an older woman, and I forget the exact circumstances, but the procedure was wild. He had to cool her body to, I think it was 50 degrees Fahrenheit, drain the blood from her brain. So no blood in her brain. Do the operation in a very short period of time, re enter the blood, and then heat her body back up and resuscitate her. Right. This happened in a
Oh,
fucking like hospital somewhere. And so she died and then was brought back to life based, I mean, in our biological sense. And she claimed that she's like, yeah, I watched the whole surgery. Like she woke up, he's like, it was a success. And she's like, yeah, I watched it. And he's like, what do you mean you watched it? And he's like, yeah, you were talking about this, this, and this. You were listening to this type of music. You did this thing. And he's like, yeah, all those things happened. She was dead. So
that's baffling.
yeah, like what the fuck is that? And I will say again, I think that's something that eventually science will have an answer for. I do, but that doesn't make it less of what it is, right?
Less
It's the same
divine.
as the free. It's the same as the free will thing. It's like, look, you and I are talking here. You may think it's because we were called to by Christ. I may say it was biologically determined. We're mechanistic beings. There is no self, but it doesn't change what it is. This conversation is still here now, and it matters, right? And the reason why people assign all these things to it is because it matters. So, not getting too locked into the explanations is maybe the best path, but sometimes maybe you need them. Like the question I have is like, do I want to raise my daughter Christian? I don't know. I mean, the data on it, I probably should, you know. I don't know. So these are all the these are all the
That's
questions we've been
interesting. That's
grappling with.
really interesting you bring that up. How old's your daughter?
She's turning 3 in September.
Okay. So, dude, that's exactly what I went through the similar thing. And you're older than me, but when I was younger in college, I was very like, yeah, I was very more secular. I kind of opposed religion even. My brother passed away. I was really trying to dive into like connecting with him, not through
Mm,
remote viewing, but there's other people, eyewitness testimony that you can like go to bed and have like a lucid dream and connect with your loved ones that are passed away. And
interesting.
I tried to do that. Like I did all the exercises and everything you got to do, the procedures, meditation, all this stuff to dial in because I missed my brother so much. I mean, he was just like how you and your brother are literally. And the next day he was gone. And so
Mm,
through doing that, I had some crazy experiences, by the way, doing that. But when my son was born and then going through and having to kind of like explain things to him, I
sure.
found myself like giving an explanation that was similar to Christ and to God. Because
Of
why?
course.
You're trying to take a very crazy, complex situation and admit you don't know to your son or daughter who's young and is just kind of just grasping things. You don't want them to be without the belief. That's the number one thing. You don't want them to like think like, no, it's just nothing. You just go in the dirt and that's it. You don't want them to believe that because that's equally as bad as believing something like, no, this is for sure what's happening. A guy came down, he had blonde hair and blue eyes. He went to America. He had these stones that had Egyptian texts on them. And yeah, we all pretty much worship him and worship Christ. Another guy that was born, So to me, equally, those are bad. And so
So
I go,
that's what
well, where am
religion
I
is.
at here? What do I do?
That's religion. That's what religion. It's like how do we tell the next generation what this is?
Yeah.
Well, we store it in a narrative, in a myth, in a story. And like myth, it doesn't mean it's not real. I was listening to this debate between it was like Brett Weinstein and Douglas Murray and Jordan Peterson and all of them, and they were talking about useful fictions, which I don't know if that's exactly the best way to word it, but here's a good example. Is religion true? Okay. Useful fiction. All right. What does that mean? Well, you're embedding truth within a story, not just here's a fact. It's within a greater context. And there's like epigenetic implications there. The example that they used was, if you know anything about gun safety, you always treat a gun as if it's loaded. That's the number one rule of gun safety. Okay. A gun isn't always loaded, but you always treat it as if it's loaded. Why? Because it prevents gun deaths, right? So if I'm going to show you a gun, I'm going to look at it, make sure the safety's on, not pointed at you, check the chamber, make sure there's no bullet. And if there is, take it out. And then I'm going to hand it to you a certain way. And you're going to do the same thing. You're going to take it, make sure the safety's off, not pointed at me, check. Okay, there's nothing in the chamber. Cool. And then if you hand it back to me, I'm going to do the same thing, having just watched you do it after me doing it. So it's like, if this was any other circumstance, it would just be insane. It would be like schizophrenics. Like, oh, is like we both know there could be no bullets for 1,000 miles, but we both know there's nothing in here. Treating it as if it is true has a better outcome. So like, what does that mean? And like, you could say like in the little seminar, the debate that we're having, if someone approached you and said, hey, a casino just opened across the street, and they said, we'll bet you $1 million that there's a bullet inside there, you would bet all of your money that there's no bullet inside there because you know there's not, but you also act as if there is. There's something there. I don't know what to make of that, but there's something there, you know?
Yep. Yep, exactly. Same goes for going to church and all these different things. You're exactly right. I guess we'll move on from kind of the religious talk. I know I could talk
Sure.
about it all day long. I'm sure you could too. I guess we should probably talk a little bit about politics. We're like an hour in. We haven't really mentioned anything about politics.
Yeah, let's do some of that.
So you had Thomas Russo on the show, and you had the guy from Return to the Land. What's his name?
Eric Orwell goes by
Eric.
Orville.
Yeah, smart guys, man. Eric Orwell, I watched that podcast and I was like, wow, it really amazed me. Oh, and then you guys had Fishback on too. And you guys are killing it with the guests. You guys have really high level guests on. Okay, so let's start with Fishback. I got to ask you about all these guests. I can update all the people that watch my show about your show, and then maybe they'll want
Sure.
to come over and watch it. So,
Yeah.
Fishback, what is your official take on Fishback now that you've done a podcast with him?
As an individual, I have no reason to believe there's anything wrong with him. What is very clear is that he's an intelligent person. He's a very good politician. He's very good at being a politician. That could be good and that could be bad. I mean, we see the problems with politicians. So again, could he just be grifting? Sure. Could he be totally genuine? Totally. Here's the issue. All of this nationalist stuff really comes down to a very precise focal point, and it's that structuring a nation should be cultural. Culture is downstream from race. So I want representation on the basis of race. You know, I look at him and he's very assimilated to American culture. You know, he's very American. He loves America, but his dad is a heritage American. He's a white American. As far as I know, there's some rumor that he's Jewish. We'll just suspend disbelief for the sake of this point. His dad's a white American. His mom is a first generation Colombian immigrant. So he's half Colombian, half American. That's kind of how I would view him. So to me, that's going to create an internal bias, right? He's more understanding of immigrants. Why? Because his mother is an immigrant. It's very simple stuff. It's like he loves his mother. His mother's an immigrant. He's going to take that into consideration with everything he does moving forward. Totally fair, but it's to be expected. I'm not going to be voting for him, and it's not because I don't think he's the best candidate. He clearly is the better candidate. But I don't feel inclined to participate in politics as is. I just think I'm just sort of over it. And maybe that's juvenile. You could say it's juvenile, fine. But what am I participating in at this point? I'm a single issue voter. Whites are going extinct. We're being replaced. Now, if you watch the documentary, anybody that hasn't seen it, feel free to go to Frojack's official, Frojax. You can watch it on there. And I can tell you about the circumstances of the interview in a second. But he could not define what an American is. He said a few things about what an American isn't. He says, an American isn't paperwork. Okay, well, sure, great start. An American isn't this. An American isn't that. An American isn't a Somalian that doesn't learn English. Okay, what is an American? What is it? Because I can tell you what I think it is. You can't. And that's because he's appealing to a broader audience, not nationalists like my brother and I or you. He's appealing to most people, and most people don't view things in this way. So I don't have like a one-sided angle on him. I don't say good or bad. I say he's a great politician. If you're going to vote, he's probably the better vote. I'm not endorsing any politicians at the moment, but he was perfectly kind to me. Now, the circumstances of the interview were a little bit different than people think, because initially when he started blowing up all over the internet and he went on Tucker Carlson, all this stuff, I DM'd him on Instagram. I said, hey, I'd love to interview you. He sent me a voice message right back. He said, great. Here's my assistant's email. Send him an email. We'll set something up. So cool. I sent his assistant an email. We set something up for maybe 6 weeks out. Okay. So I confirmed the day before. Yep, everything's good. We'll meet here. It was in Tampa. We're in Orlando. So it's like a 3 hour drive. Cool. So the next day, we're in our car. We start driving to Tampa. They had to cancel, like, while we're driving out there, suited up and everything. We're like, oh, this is a little bit disappointing. But it turns out he had some sort of security breach. Somebody was threatening his life. So fair enough. We rescheduled. And I think it was for the next day or a few days later. And then he canceled that too. I was like, okay, can we reschedule a third time? And then it was kind of an iffy, da da da. And then eventually it became like, oh, we'll get back to you. We'll get back to you when we're in your area. And I'm like, okay. During this time, Jackson and I had started advocating for total remigration, which is a controversial political stance. And look, he would be implicated in such a thing in this hypothetical universe where we remigrated everybody that wouldn't fall under the socially constructed definition of what a white American is. And he knew that. And I think he started avoiding us because I made it very clear, like, listen, I know you're busy, you're campaigning, it's expensive, it's time consuming. I have a car, we'll drive to wherever you are anytime, just let us know and we'll work with you. Yeah, we'll let you know. Okay, ghost, just ghosted me, reached out, ghosted. Okay, so I found out who his campaign manager was, hit her up on Twitter, ghost. Okay, we're just going to show up, right? So my buddy sent me a flyer. He's like, hey, he'll be at this place at this time. Cool. We'll go do that. We drove 7 hours to North Florida and we just showed up. We watched his speech. He did a good job. He got off stage. He said, everybody line up for photos. And it was so funny. It was like 90% white dudes, a lot of America First hats, a lot of like the Groiper vibe. And while we're waiting in line, probably 200, 250 people, a bunch of his fans that are there to see him start recognizing us. So people start taking pictures with Jackson and I. Oh, you guys are Frojax, da da da. We were listening to your music or whatever. And then we got closer to the front of the line and Fishback, he looked over at me. He saw me. He's like, oh, what's up, guys? Hey, how's it? Like, there was like this nod where it's like, okay, I can't back down. You guys showed up. We're in public. I'm not going to deny you the interview, probably because as you were in line, you were telling all my fans that you're trying to interview me. So we sort of bombarded him a little bit. It was polite. We got out there. I was like, hey, man, can I get the interview? He's like, of course, da da da. I do think that he had to do the interview. And he did a good job. I mean, it's very 50-50. If you read the comments on it, a lot of people sided with him. A lot of people sided with us. It's no bad blood, but we sort of forced him to do the interview in a sense under, I guess, social pressures. And our goal there really was to push the Overton window. It's like, listen, man, I know that you're appealing to the Nick Fuentes America First crowd, and that's great and all, but that isn't enough because that doesn't solve for my single issue, which is white Americans are being replaced. And I think that's a detriment to all people in America. And I think that's the case. So anyway, I guess he's good for Groypers. He seems like a nice Christian guy. But overall, time will tell as it does with all politicians. And I look forward, I hope that he succeeds. I hope that he does good for I live in Florida. I hope he does good for Florida. And I wish him the best. I wish him the best of luck. So I guess that's kind of my long-winded take on Fishback as it stands.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I respect that. I figured that was your take on that for anyone that didn't know what your take was. There it is. If you're interested in knowing what my take is, I don't support Fishback anymore. I don't post about him. I don't live in Florida, so I won't be able to vote or not vote for him, but I wouldn't vote for him either.
Sure.
And I would classify myself as a groiper, I guess you could say. I follow Nick Fuentes. I agree with him on a lot of stuff, but I don't agree with him on everything. And he said he supports Fishback. Well, I disagree with him on that. And this is why. We have had politicians that have tried to say everything they can. They get right up to the edge of what we want. They don't grant it to us. They say, we're anti-Israel, we're this, we're that, all these promises. But then guess what? They never can say America is a white nation. If Fishback, I'm disappointed because Fishback's a smart guy. He is. He's a smart guy. He's a way better candidate than the other guy. Those are all true. But it doesn't matter because what's more important to me is not Florida's next governor election. What's really important is that we build a single voting block of people that our standards are high. And those standards are America's a white nation. We will remigrate people out of here. And we are going to protect and fight for ourselves and our own racial group. That is what we're doing here. And that is way more important than this not silly, but this little Florida election. So the fact that you guys are doing that is a great take, a great perspective. Now, you don't want to spend all of our time hating on Fishback. I get it because they're anti-Israel just like we are. And I think that's really
Yeah.
important. And the groupers get lost in being anti-Israel rather than being racial. Totally
Right.
acknowledge that. And I'm trying to move into the racial direction because it's
Yes.
important. It's really important that everybody
Yeah.
knows. Just because I may say I'm a groiper or because other groipers say they are, that doesn't mean they're like not racialist or they believe that, oh, if you're Mexican, you're good. Like, no. It doesn't. It doesn't mean that at all. We identify that what America is a white nation. Now, I also would say too, is that if you're a politician or you're going to be a politician or for Fishback, who's really smart, what he could have said, what I would have said if I was in his position is because it's like, well, look, he's fought this hard. He's worked super hard. He is half white or a quarter, or, he's, what is he, three-quarters white? And so it's like, well, what's the percentage of making him white and not white? And you go, well, he's good. If you're 50 and you're good, but it's like, no, he's not good. Clearly, he is not white. His mother was a direct immigrant. So you're right. He has allegiances to people invading our nation. So therefore, that disqualifies him. What he could have said, though, which is, you know what? I do believe America's a white nation. My father made a mistake and mixed, raced, right? And no, hold on, listen. I'm not trying to be funny here. He didn't make a mistake. Maybe he loved my mom, whatever you could say.
Right.
But you
Sure.
know who is white and who will be white? My great great grandkids, right?
Interesting.
My
Interesting.
great great grandkids will be white because my daughters will be taught about white culture and that America's a white nation, and they will inevitably be with white people. And then those white people will have kids, and their grandkids will be white. And will be so low of a Colombian genetic line that I will be at that point, my genetic line will be American. And that's a lot of us, right? A lot of us share that exact same thing, right? And so that's what he could have said, and it could have solved everything. But instead, he decided to say that I'm taking a political risk by doing your podcast. That's the final straw that broke the camel's back for me of what I said. Nope, I'm not supporting him no more.
Yeah. He should have just said. He should have just said, "I'm gonna bleach my genetics out of the equation for you guys." That's what he should have said. Honestly, I would have voted. I would have been like, you know what, dude? That's some wild foresight.
Not
Something that
for you
my brother.
guys, not for you guys, but for America. I want to be American. And the way I'm going to become American is by becoming American genetically, right? That's what he could have said. And then you could say, you know what? Okay, well, then maybe you can be the Florida governor if you're clearly taking our side. Maybe not the president, maybe not anything more than that, but you can hold some position in America because why? You're passing down and you eventually, like I said, will be white. Okay. I think that could be at least argued. I'm not saying it's acceptable. I'm saying that could be argued to be acceptable. Okay. Now, he didn't do
Interesting.
that. And then on top of that, he said that he's taking a political risk by doing your podcast, which is so backwards and wrong. And that's where I'm like, I hate that. They try to make us feel bad for giving the takes that we're giving, which is we're pro-white. They try to make you feel like you're Hitler. He's doing the exact same thing that he claims to be fighting, saying that we're not going to disenfranchise white people. But you literally are right now by saying that. And I get the exact same thing. And it angers me,
And not being white.
Yeah. What up? Yeah.
What do you think
So
about our
true.
interview? Did we turn him into a fish fillet?
Yeah.
The thing that Jackson and I have been realizing is you can only be pro-white insofar as you are white. Like, for example, we see this with Nick Fuentes. He's white, presenting, people accept him as white, but he's a quarter Mexican. And if we were to say, oh, well, we're going to remigrate everybody that's half or more Mexican, well, his dad gets deported. It's like, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So he would be against that. So the more for those disparities we control for, probably the better. And like,
And that's
even
what
with
we need to be paying attention to, not the percentages as much. Like, it's like, well, he's this percent or that percent. It's like, well, I mean, we got to pay attention to it, of course. But really,
Sure.
why it's important? Why is it important? Is because they have allegiance, because their
Exactly.
parents came here. So that erodes our borders. We talked earlier about what makes a nation. Well, guess what? They have incentive to erode that at which makes us a nation. And
If
so
anybody
we should
wants
pay
to go
attention.
watch the reaction that Hodge twins did to our interview with Fishback, they would agree with everything. You know, they would say, oh, well, black people are causing a lot of problems. Immigration's causing a lot of problems. We would prefer to live around white people. But when we say, okay, well, here are the necessary actions to create that environment, they say, oh, well, why? Well, they're half black. It's quite simple, really. And it's nothing personal.
Yeah.
They're fully assimilated non-white people. I like them, but it's a matter of like you agree with everything leading up to my diagnosis. You know, it's the premise is all the same. Everyone gets it, but they're only allegiant insofar as they're included in the final slice of the pie.
Yeah. I'm not abandoning MAGA, ruining my whole life, and trying to save my nation, all to just get in a bunch of Nick Fuentes, Fishbacks, Hodge twins, a bunch of half-breed people that pretty much goes against our entire backing of what we believe. I mean, I'm not going to sell MAGA for MAGA 2.0. That's retarded. But
Right.
I'll let you go. I know you're a busy guy. You got many things to do today.
Yeah, it was a good convo.
What was that?
It was a good convo. I appreciate you having me on, dude.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. I want to do more conversations like this. I think this was great. Make sure you guys follow Frojax. Now your name is Forrest, but you go by Instagram. It's Hurting Murphy, right? Still?
Hurting Murphy. Yeah, still. I'll probably change it eventually. That was my DJ moniker when I produced Dubstep. Now I'm just a political person. So we'll see how things flow. But yeah, Hurting Murphy, HurtingMurphy. And then Frojax is the main project with both Jackson and I.
Perfect. All right, brother. Have a good one. We'll see you guys again soon. Make sure to follow Forrest on Instagram, Hurting Murphy.
Appreciate you, brother. God bless.